Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When it comes to the money you spend every day, we have you covered every morning. Making money makes sense. Weekdays on CBS Mornings.
The workplace has shifted after 3 years of COVID. What it means for your pursuit of happiness. Join me on Primetime.
Stream live on the free CBS News app.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is top of mind on Capitol Hill as he remains hospitalized in Washington.
My thoughts and prayers are with Leader McConnell this morning.
I wanted to come here today to lay out the next part of my economic plan. My budget I'm sending to Congress today.
Is the president's budget dead on arrival?
Yeah, of course.
Social Security is going to go bankrupt in 10 years. Medicare is going to go bankrupt in 5 years. You can do what Joe Biden's doing and hide your head in the sand, or as he loves to do, raise taxes.
Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Weijia Jiang in Washington. Thank you for joining us. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is in the hospital after suffering a concussion. The Kentucky Republican senator tripped and fell at a dinner for the Senate Leadership Fund at a hotel in Washington last night. A spokesperson says he will be treated at the hospital for a few days. And President Biden unveiled his budget in Philadelphia today with the aim of cutting the deficit by nearly $3 trillion over 10 years. The proposal is likely dead on arrival in the House, with multiple GOP lawmakers speaking out against it. For more on this, Nancy Cordes and Scott McFarland join us now. Nancy is CBS News' chief White House correspondent. Scott is a CBS News congressional correspondent. Let's start with you, Nancy, because you were CBS's chief congressional correspondent at one point, so you know very well that this budget proposal is really just a wish list, right? Just a political document that the president wants to put out there. So what do you glean from this proposal when it comes to the president's agenda?
You're right, Weijia. It typically is a wish list. Sometimes it doesn't get that much attention on Capitol Hill because it's those lawmakers who actually write up the spending bills that end up being signed into law, they hope, by the president. But this time around, the president's budget is getting a lot more attention, and that's because there is this looming fight between the White House and congressional Republicans over raising the debt ceiling, which has to be done by sometime this summer, or the government's going to run out of cash to pay its bills. And Republicans have drawn this line in the sand, and they've said that they are not going to vote to raise the debt ceiling unless there are major spending cuts. They say they're very concerned about the deficit. So today, the president put his budget on the table and said, hey, I'm very concerned about the deficit, too, and my proposal would lower the deficit by about $3 trillion over the next 10 years. But he doesn't do it by slashing spending. He does it in a large part by imposing new taxes on the wealthy and on corporations. In fact, he lays out more spending, additional new spending that he'd like to do when it comes to making child care more affordable, making community college more affordable, expanding universal pre-K. But he says he can more than offset that by doing things like raising the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28% and imposing a new 25% tax aimed primarily at billionaires.
But to your point, Nancy, I mean, one of these sides has to give a little bit somewhere, right? Otherwise, it's hard to imagine how they go forward. So what can the White House do, to fulfill their promise that they won't consider the debt ceiling in these negotiations, but also get Republicans on board?
Right. So the White House is still claiming publicly that they're not going to negotiate over raising the debt ceiling. They say that there's no tit for tat here, that Congress has a responsibility to pay for things that it has already enacted into law, and that it's not going to give in to Republicans' demands. At the same time, the White House is saying, hey, we do care about lowering the deficit. Here's our budget that proves it. What do Republicans want to do? If they want to slash spending, have them show us what it is that they want to do. The White House believes that this is a fight for public opinion that they can win, because they argue that a lot of the things that the president put on the table here are broadly popular. They argue that things like universal pre-K and lowering the cost of community college and the like are very popular, as are taxes on the wealthy. And so they're saying, OK, Republicans claim that they want to lower the deficit as well, but that you can't really have a meaningful conversation until Republicans show a little leg, if you will, and lay out what it is that they'd like to slash as well. President Biden almost egging on the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in his speech in Philadelphia today, basically saying, hey, you know, I'm ready to meet with you anytime. Just show me what your budget looks like, and then we'll talk.
I was also struck, Nancy, by how much the president talked about his accomplishments to date rather than focus on what's to come. So did you take today's speech as a warm-up for his re-election campaign?
Sure. And we know from polling that there are many Americans who still aren't aware of some of his accomplishments over the past 2 years. The White House really believes they have to take every opportunity they have to kind of remind people, I passed this, I passed that, infrastructure, Inflation Reduction Act, and the like. And they knew that there would be a lot of eyeballs on this particular speech today. And so, yes, he sort of rattled through, as you notice, that laundry list of things that he has managed to get done. And this budget is kind of, you know, beyond being a sort of a spending prescription for the next year, it's kind of an outline of the things that he wants to do, that he'll be talking about a lot on the campaign trail if and when he does announce his bid for re-election. There are a lot of things that he, you know, a lot of these things are not new to us. After covering him for 2 years, they are things that he has talked about since he came into office, but he didn't manage to get them done over the first 2 years. And it's unlikely, frankly, that he can get some of them done now that Republicans control the House of Representatives. But nevertheless, this is his platform. This is what he ran on, and he's going to continue to run on it if and when he does announce his bid for re-election.
Right. It sure seems like it's what he wants to do to, quote, finish the job, as he talked about so often during his State of the Union address. Nancy Curtis, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We turn now to Scott MacFarlane on Capitol Hill. Scott, what are lawmakers telling you today about the president's proposal?
That line in the sand just described by Nancy that has been drawn by House Republican leadership is increasingly intimidating and ominous as the days and weeks go by, when there don't seem to be any tangible or noticeable negotiations, discussions, meeting of the minds or hearts of Republicans here on the Hill and the Biden administration, because we get nearer and nearer this ominous deadline for the debt ceiling breach, for a default on American debt. And the longer it goes, the deeper each side digs itself on either side of that line in the sand. And all we see day after day over the past few weeks is both sides getting a little deeper on their side of the line. So there is a trajectory towards danger that is unmistakable in this moment, Ouija, and really could be just a matter of weeks away.
Well, and Republicans, of course, will play the blame game along with Democrats. But if they're the ones not voting, it would be on them. So aren't they worried about what a default could mean for their own political futures?
I don't think we're there yet. I think we get to the stage where each side will become particularly worried of who gets blamed for this. But until it gets closer, both sides, I believe, think they're winning political points with their political bases. Republicans sense they have an easy time going back home and selling opposition to a debt ceiling increase without spending cuts as making them better stewards of the taxpayer dollars and evoking some support from their base. Biden administration, and most certainly the congressional Democrats with whom I speak, think that their messaging during this dispute over preserving Social Security and preserving Medicare reaffirms what their base wants to hear. So until this gets more dangerous, apparently, there are political victories to be had. Thing is, as those political victories are won, a massive loss to our economy, to our credit rating, and to the integrity of the U.S. dollar are staring us in the face.
Yeah, for sure. I want to get an update from you, Scott, about Leader McConnell's condition, because we just talked about how he had a fall. But first, I want to hear from some of his colleagues.
No one does it better than Mitch, and so that will. We're looking forward to him coming back quickly.
Hopefully he'll be back. Hopefully he'll be back next Tuesday when we're up and running, and just knowing him, I'm sure he's watching C-SPAN.
I hope that he gets the care that he needs, that he gets better soon, and that we see him again. It's tough, but I know that people across America, and especially folks back in Kentucky, they want to see their senator and their leader.
So how is Senator McConnell doing?
According to his office, Ouija, he is recovering from a concussion. He'll be hospitalized for at least a few days. The emergency dispatch happened late Wednesday night during a Republican political event at the old Trump Hotel, now the Waldorf Astoria near the White House. It is a concussion. According to one of his colleagues, he is awake. He is talking, but there is no date certain for a return. And that makes 3 U.S. senators not here recovering from any of a range of medical issues who have no date certain for return. And Ouija, obviously, it's the secondary concern, but there are practical implications to this. The U.S. Senate is running with a particularly narrow majority. The Republican leader is among those not here, and they are supposed to be back in business here in Washington on Tuesday.
And their absences could impact both parties. Scott McFarland, thank you so much for joining us. With the release of President Biden's budget proposal this afternoon, we take you to the White House for an inside look of the budget and what compromises could be made with House Republicans. You're streaming Red and Blue, across the political divide.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift. I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's gonna be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today. I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm gonna remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was gonna be born, he was only gonna live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift, stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
I always tell people that Twitter would not be Twitter without Black Twitter. It's just us being in fellowship with each other.
And there becomes a conversation you don't want to be left out of.
People really started to recognize the power of activism on Twitter.
Based on that one tweet, the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite was trending around the world.
If anything has really powered Black Twitter, it's been humor.
If your food ain't right, we're gonna tell you about that too.
We tend to create change, create culture and cool.
That's how movements happen on Black Twitter and go beyond more than that.
Black Twitter, the Twitterverse that changed a generation. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
You ready?
A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
I identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
The news doesn't have to always be depressing.
What do you love about running?
It can be uplifting. That human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
I want to make it clear, I'm ready to meet with the Speaker anytime, tomorrow if he has his budget. Lay it down, tell me what you want to do, I'll show you what I want to do, see what we can agree on, or we don't agree on, let's see what we vote on.
That was President Biden this afternoon in Philadelphia. For more, let's bring in Deputy Director for the National Economic Council, Bharat Ramamurthy. Bharat, thanks so much for making some time for us today.
Of course.
We just heard there from President Biden that he is ready to meet with Speaker McCarthy. So when is this meeting happening?
Well, there's an important part of what he said there, which is he's happy to meet with the Speaker when there's a budget from the House Republicans that explains what kinds of spending cuts and revenue they're in favor of. Today, the president laid out his budget, his vision for investing in America, lowering costs for families, protecting and strengthening Social Security and Medicare, and doing all of that while reducing the budget deficit by $3 trillion. The House Republicans have talked a lot about reducing spending, but we haven't seen a single detail from any of them about how they would actually do that. Once they do that, then sure, the president is happy to meet with the Speaker.
So ahead of their first meeting, Shalanda Young, the OMB director, and Brian Deese, who has since left, the White House said that one of their main objectives was to get McCarthy to commit to a date for when he would unveil this budget of his. Do you have any sense at all when you might see a budget from the Republicans?
Honestly, no. What we see from the Republicans is a handful of policies from some of their key members, some of them talking about reducing Social Security benefits, some of them talking about cutting Medicare, some of them talking about imposing a 30% sales tax on middle-class families in the United States. What we haven't seen is a document that lays out what the consensus view is among the House Republicans. We're still waiting for that, and it's not clear when that's going to come.
What we are also seeing and hearing is a lot of strong reaction to the president's budget. So I want to hear from a few Republican lawmakers and get your reaction on the other side.
Senator, is the president's budget dead on arrival?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely, 100%, absolutely.
Most presidential budgets are DOA in the Senate. We like to do our own work. I think the president's budget, any president's budget, in modern times has become more of a messaging bill than anything else.
So to Senator Kennedy's point, there is a part of the proposal that revives some of the president's social infrastructure plan that couldn't even make it through when House Democrats controlled the House. So can you talk about how much of this is political messaging, or do you disagree with that?
Yeah, what I didn't hear there from those clips that you played was any explanation from those Republicans why they oppose any individual element of the president's budget. I would love to hear an argument for them why they oppose strengthening the solvency of Medicare for an additional 25 years by reducing how much we spend on prescription drugs, by negotiating prescription drug prices and bringing them down for seniors and for taxpayers. What I haven't heard is any principled argument about why big corporations that are making tens of billions of dollars in profit shouldn't pay slightly more in taxes in order to finance paid leave for Americans or affordable child care. So, no, it's not a political document. It's the president's vision, and he is eager to work with both parties in Congress to get as much of it done as possible.
Well, you're right that they haven't offered any details, but certainly Republicans have said there have to be spending cuts. And, the backdrop of all of this is that they have yet to decouple that from raising the debt ceiling. How confident are you that you can have negotiations about a budget proposal without the debt ceiling being part of the conversation?
Well, I think we're quite confident about it because it's been unequivocally the president's position from the beginning of all of this. He said, just as they did 3 times under President Trump, raise the debt limit without any conditions attached to it. And then if they want to have a separate conversation about spending or revenue, we're eager and happy to have that conversation. As the president said, he's eager to sit down with the speaker once he releases a budget and talk through line by line, what are they for and what are we for? But it's clear that this president will not engage in a negotiation over the debt limit. It's happened 78 times in this country's history where there's been an increase in the debt limit. We've never once defaulted on our debt, and we can't negotiate over the full faith and credit of the United States.
Of course, one of those big, bold lines, Medicare, Social Security. Today, President Biden talked about how during his State of the Union address, Republicans verbally committed, at least, not to cut either of those programs. But he also injected a little skepticism, right? So what do you think about whether those two will be on or off the table as you head into these negotiations?
Well, look, that's entirely up to the Republicans. If they want to follow through on the commitment that they seem to have made during the State of the Union, that would be great. The president would be eager to lock in that commitment because it protects some key promises that we have made to seniors on their health care coverage and on Social Security. But what we won't know until we get that document from the House Republicans that says what they're for. It's important to note that several key members of that caucus, both recently and over time, have called for cutting Social Security or raising the retirement age. So we'll know it when we see it. But at this point, it's premature to speculate.
And of course, there are sweeping tax hikes throughout this entire budget proposal. On the campaign trail, then, candidate Biden promised that taxes on small businesses won't go up. But this budget includes a corporate income tax rate increase from 21% to 28%. On C corporations, about a fourth of which are small employers. So what do you say to those employers who, thought that the president wouldn't raise their taxes?
Well, I want to be clear that any individual making under $400,000 or less will not see a tax increase under this proposal. And C corporations, as the president has proposed, would see a higher rate. But there's also an exclusion for that for folks making under $400,000 and any company incorporated in that form. So we feel quite confident that any individual or small business that makes under that $400,000 threshold is not going to see an increase because of this proposal.
All right. Bharat Ramamurthy, thank you so much. I hope we can chat with you again once you have a better sense of what it is you're up against. Thank you.
Thanks.
The 2024 race for the Republican nomination is very much underway in Iowa. We head to the Hawkeye State next to hear what GOP voters there want to see in their presidential nominee. You're streaming Red and Blue.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Controversial Congressman George Santos.
Why won't you answer our questions?
How did he manage to get elected?
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
George Santos' campaign was a campaign of deceit, lies, fabrication.
And who is he, really?
I knew him as Anthony DeVolder from Queens.
Really, who he is, he's a fraud.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
From people who know him, the truth, the facts, the lies.
He would say that he was worth $100 million.
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics, beyond satire.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Campaign of Deceit, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She dazzled on the court and off the court as a businesswoman.
Thank you for joining us on Person to Person. Tennis superstar and entrepreneur Serena Williams.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
I asked my students, what are we going to do about racism in the United States?
The backlash over teaching about racism in American schools.
I don't think it has any place in the classroom.
We can either pretend and say, no, we're not racist and we're all great people, or we can actually start to do the really, really hard work of addressing it.
How did you lose your job? I made the statement that white privilege is a fact.
Is it helping diversity and inclusion?
When you bring in different people's stories and experience, it enriches education.
If you don't talk about something, it doesn't go away.
Or driving us further apart?
What schools are doing to our children in the name of anti-racism is in fact teaching them racism.
The intention is to put us in this war against each other.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
I was entitled to equal pay for equal work under the law.
Does the Supreme Court's power need to be checked?
9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them said no, she's not entitled. That's not right.
Calls to fix the court tend to go along with the politics of the moment.
Republican-appointed justices have all tended to go in one direction, with the Democratic-appointed justices tending to go in another.
Even though it's only 9 justices, it takes 5 of them to make the law of the land.
Does it have political impact? True. Political intent? Probably not true.
If the American people don't trust the judgment of their court, that's a real problem for our democracy.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
It needs to be someone who has good moral conservative values, that cares about our country and about our children.
Somebody that's really willing to work with others on both sides of the aisle.
I'm going to keep an open mind, listen to everybody that is declaring for the Republican Party, and base my decision off of where they stand for their viewpoints and who I think is going to do the best for the country.
Iowa Republicans last night at Nikki Haley's town hall in Council Bluffs saying what they want in a candidate. The former South Carolina governor is not the only high-profile Republican trying to make gains in the first-in-the-nation caucus state. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who is not a declared candidate yet, is heading there tomorrow and will hold multiple events with the state's governor, Kim Reynolds. And former President Trump is heading to Iowa on Monday, his first trip there since his campaign launched back in November. CBS News' chief election and campaign correspondent, Robert Costa, joins us now from Nevada, Iowa, a suburb of Des Moines. Robert, I see you went to Smitty's. I imagine you talked to some fellow diners and voters there. What are they telling you about what they're looking for as all these candidates invade their state?
It's good to be with you here from Nevada, Iowa. I just landed a few hours ago. Talking to Iowa Republican voters, it's evident that we are at an early stage in the 2024 conversation here in this state, famously home to the Republican presidential caucuses. Former President Trump remains a favorite of so many Republicans here, but they're giving a listen to former Ambassador Nikki Haley, who will have an event here later this evening, and to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who will make a trip here on Friday to talk about his book, but also to introduce himself to Iowa voters.
Right. DeSantis is heading there tomorrow. He, has said this is just a book tour, but can it really be just a book tour with this big elephant in the room as we wait for him to formally enter the race, probably after the legislative session there in Florida is over?
It is a book tour, but like everything in Iowa, as you know, politics infuses the entire conversation here on the ground. What's going to be something to watch at the DeSantis event, as well as here at the Nikki Haley event, is how do these contenders and potential contenders in DeSantis's case interact with voters? DeSantis has been a governor of a major state now, winning twice. That's a state where television and large set pieces are a key part of being governor. Iowa's all about the touch in terms of handshakes, meeting voters, having smaller events. DeSantis will have a conversation on stage with the governor, Kim Reynolds, a Republican. She's remaining neutral so far in the Iowa 2024 discussion. But that's a sign that he has support from a fellow governor, if not for 2024, at least politically. She's standing with him. She's standing with a lot of other candidates, too. And DeSantis is someone who has carved out a space as a social conservative due to his stance on social issues, on education. And this is a state where social conservatives have long done well. Senator Ted Cruz won the caucuses here in 2016. This is a place that embraced Rick Santorum when he ran for president in 2012, did well in the Iowa caucuses, ultimately won Iowa that year. Could DeSantis be the favorite this time around? Perhaps, if he runs, but he will certainly face competition in that particular wing of the GOP from someone like former Vice President Mike Pence, who is expected to run and has long been someone close to evangelical Christian conservatives.
Well, unlike Reynolds, one person who is not remaining neutral is a former DHS official Ken Cuccinelli, who, of course, served under former President Trump. Let's take a listen to what he had to say today.
America's future is Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis doesn't just talk, he acts. but most of all, he never backs down. Governor DeSantis, today I'm asking you to run for president. You've had our back, now we will have yours. It's time for fresh conservative leadership.
Cuccinelli is one of the first Trump officials to formally endorse someone who is not Donald Trump. Is this significant? Does this open the door to others doing the same?
It's significant in the sense that it's a sign of a trend we see among Republican activists and donors. Some of them, even if they have been previously aligned with former President Trump, want to give DeSantis a boost as he moves closer to his own 2024 campaign. But at the end of the day, when you talk to allies close to DeSantis and allies close to Trump and other contenders, it's clear that if you want to beat Trump for the nomination, you, one, have to run and actually get in the race, and you have to eventually take him on directly. So far, whether it's DeSantis or former Ambassador Haley, they've largely avoided having a direct confrontation with the former president, who is liable, as we've seen in the past, to give any kind of rival a nickname or scathing criticism. You see the contenders and potential contenders trying to avoid that kind of skirmish politically. But at the end of this race, it will largely be unavoidable if they really want to plow through Trump and win that nomination. But we are at this early stage where they're trying to generate their own interest, enthusiasm, and buzz rather than going right at Trump.
Well, we will see what Trump himself has to say about them when he heads to the state on Monday. Robert Costa, thank you for joining us. That does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday, Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. That's Monday to Thursday. You are streaming CBS News.
In today's Money Watch, business analyst Jill Schlesinger is here to help.
How do you even begin to make the best use of your money?
If you've got a match from your employer, don't give away that money.
Dollar Jill, y'all.
CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.